All right. You know what time it is. Welcome to Lombardi's Legends podcast. Dane here with Wags. Wags, week 18, which is the first time I've ever said that at the end of a football season, that extra game, first time in its existence. The Packers playing mostly meaningless game against the Detroit Lions because last week, of course, we all know we wrapped up the number one seed. But let's break this down a bit. Maybe not the game as much today as I think, some of the strategy behind what we're doing here in week 18. Maybe some guys who are going to pop. Wags, there's always plenty of space to talk about Green Bay Packer football. So how are you feeling going into this game? Kind of a pressureless game, so to speak, from a win-loss column perspective. But anytime we're putting Aaron out there, Devontae and some of these others, there's risk involved. So how are you feeling coming into this game? And let's just crack right into this thing.
Well, it's basically a preseason game, but as you said, the only difference is playoffs is right around the corner. And how long are these important guys going to be out there? And anytime you're playing football, there's risk of injury. So injuries could have happened last week. Were we not supposed to play anyone because we had playoffs locked up? No, you've still got a lot to play for. So I know that everyone involved is putting on a brave face and saying they're going to Detroit to try to win. But the reality is the first priority is just to keep these guys sharp, potentially getting a couple key guys back from injury that we've been talking about for a long, long time. And of course, keeping everyone healthy. So I think we're going to get a good dose of a number of backup players, whether Aaron Rodgers and Devontae and Aaron Jones play more than a series or two. We'll see. I would be pretty surprised if they're out there later than the first or early second quarter. I guess Coach LaFleur will have to make that call. He says there's not a specific plan. I don't agree. I'm sure there's a plan. He's just not going to tip his hand. So don't read too much into that either. But Dane, it's anticipation. It's nice that this game doesn't really matter. We put ourselves in this position. The players and the coaching staff and the team has earned the opportunity to get a decreased workload. And essentially, for all intents and purposes, while it's not a true buy, they're going to essentially get a buy in game. So kind of cool that we're going to get to see some other guys out there as well.
Yeah. So Wags, fill me in here. Do you think Aaron and Devontae play more than a series or two? I've got my fantasy football playoff livelihood riding on both Aaron and Devontae this year. But in all seriousness, I see them playing. I think that LaFleur is right to do what they're doing here. I want to be very clear. I like it. I think he kind of read the room a little bit. Devontae and Aaron right after the game saying they were planning on playing some of the game. I think he's kind of gone around, talked with some of the veterans here, got a sense of like what their comfort level was, how they wanted to approach it as well. That's a sense that I've gotten from some of LaFleur's comments. And then they made an informed decision and decided, okay, we're going to do this. I don't see them playing more than 2 or 3 series. Me personally, I don't see them certainly past halftime. But Wags, I'd be surprised if we see them pass like maybe a series in the second quarter. Then I think it's Jordan Love time. I think we're going to see some of the younger wide receivers. I think we might get a heavy dose of Patrick Taylor at running back even in the second half. So kind of curious, do you see that as the breakdown, or do you see them really playing a full half or potentially even more than that?
No, I agree with kind of where you have it. There's a couple of things here. I'm sure one, our offense in particular has been slow starting. We've been talking about this all year. They were able to get a field goal in their first series last week, but I think there's a sense of urgency there. Let's go out in our first offensive series and score a touchdown. So to me, the coaching staff, they're going to have, shorter term milestones for this team and this starting group this week. And if they hit those milestones, that's going to determine, I think, the number of series they play is kind of how it shakes out. Now, if they have 3 crappy series, they're still probably going to get pulled out either way. But I'm sure it's sort of like, okay, if we're crisp and we have a really good first series, maybe they run him out there for one more series and then let's call it a day. If they have another frustratingly slow start, maybe it's a little bit of punishment and they get 3 or 4 series instead of 2 or 3. So, I know we're saying this tongue in cheek, and these decisions aren't being made as like, oh, we're trying to punish the players, but in a way, they are going to want to see certain performance indicators just to make sure that the goal is to keep the team sharp, motivated, hungry, and that we're not having a lapse. And for that reason, I think that's why they're trying to do what they're doing. Dane, honestly, I know we talked a little bit about this in our Packer chat offline here. I would have been totally fine if they sat our main starters this week. I think they've earned a bye. I don't really think it makes that much of a difference. It looks better on paper because if they come out slow in that divisional game, everybody's going to be stuck in guessing this. Whereas if you just play a series or two, the reality is while there's some risk of injury, you're really mitigating that quite a bit. And there's ways that you can not completely eliminate potential injury from happening because you still have to play football, but there's things that they can do to put guys in certain positions that are not going to put them at as high of a risk. Let's just put it that way. So this isn't, fourth quarter down 3, need a first down to keep your season from ending type football that they're going to be playing on Sunday. The last thing I guess I would just to turn it over to you. Do you think any of this has to do with the fact that now we've learned since those post-game comments that they're circling this as a potential return game for David Bakhtiari, for Randall Cobb, maybe even Josh Myers, who's a little bit of a surprise that was added to that's been practicing this week. Jair Alexander, if he comes off a COVID list tomorrow, I think we probably will see that. This seems like a game they've got circled for him to come back. So is it as much about kind of having those guys get onto the field together to at least get some symmetry before this playoff run?
Wags. So anybody who's listening on Apple Podcasts or otherwise, I'm grinning ear to ear as you're listing all of these very, very talented Green Bay Packers that have the potential of coming back this week. And I think you kind of are hitting the nail on the head, to be honest with you. It feels like it feels very close, like we're getting some of these guys back this week and that they're going to use this as a bit of a dress rehearsal to make sure that some of these guys are just getting some timing, getting on the same page. Now, are we getting them all back? I don't think we're getting them all back, but I think that we're going to see a fair number of them coming back this week. I think Randall Cobb is going to be back this week. I think Myers probably gets back this week in some shape or form as well. Bakhtiari, we'll see. Didn't practice today, practiced Wednesday. It sounds like that was part of the plan, according to the coaching staff. He's scheduled to practice again tomorrow. I think one of the biggest indicators we've gotten of a positive from on the Bakhtiari front was LaFleur raving about how good his Wednesday practice was. I think that might be an indicator. He goes Friday. I have a feeling he might play some snaps then on Sunday as well. I think Jair's coming back. Coach Gray, the DB's coach, was talking about the mental issue of just playing fast, knowing that your shoulder's going to be okay. He was talking more in those terms at this point, not about talking about like an injury risk. I think it was more of like the mental, just making sure he's playing fast, not worrying about the injury, and making sure Jair plays at that speed. When you start talking in those terms about these players, I don't know about you, but it sure feels like, okay, there's some real chance that these guys are going to get back out on the field. And this is the time to get them back out as far as I'm concerned. I don't need them getting their first reps, David Bakhtiari in a year, Jair Alexander in 12, 13 weeks to be in the second round of a playoff game, right? It just, that doesn't seem like the best time to do it against a Detroit Lions team that has nothing to play for either. For a completely different reason than the Packers. It seems like a good time to really tune it up. You're going to get good looks from probably young players that the Lions are going to be trying to, see what they've got for next year. So, they're going to be getting kind of their best shot, but just lesser talent. It's a good week to get these guys mixed in. And if you're doing that, with all due respect to Jordan Love, you probably want to have Aaron Rodgers in there with David Bakhtiari. You're going to probably want to have Aaron Rodgers with Randall Cobb, right? You're going to want to have some of the starters around Jair Alexander just to mix and match and get a feel for where we're at. So long and short of it is, I couldn't agree with you more, Wags. And I think that it's very encouraging where we're at right now, because it's not every day that a team that's going to the playoffs is getting some all-pro talent potentially back on both sides of the ball just in time for the stretch run.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do with a Josh Myers, for example. Is he going to get an opportunity to earn his starting spot back, or is Lucas Patrick entrenched there? You and I have both talked about, we think, let's not mess with a good thing. Lucas Patrick's been playing good football. Let's just ride this out. Josh Myers is a rookie. Got a bright future ahead of him as far as we're both concerned.
Yeah, no disrespect to Josh.
Yeah,
right? Sorry
no, not at all.
He's
but
fantastic.
it still helps this team if he's back, even if he's not on the field. Our depth is so much better, even if he's not playing, and he's a good player. So that way, if something happens not only to Lucas Patrick, but to either of our starting young guards, Lucas Patrick maybe slides over right away to guard, and we've got Josh Myers, our starting center, that can come right into the football game. So don't kid yourselves. That could play a part at some point in a playoff run. So even if he just gets some reps with the second team in Sunday's matchup, that could be significant for a guy like him. Billy Turner doesn't look like he's going to play. He's on the COVID list still. So even if he's cleared tomorrow, he hadn't been practicing at all the last few weeks. So we don't really have a good read on him. But the fact that he hadn't practiced in a few weeks, even if he's cleared and we're able to get a limited practice in tomorrow, I would say it's probably unlikely that he would be ramped up and ready to go by Sunday, even if it's just for a couple of series. But perhaps they can, with a shorter workload, get him up and running, knowing that they don't need to get 65, 70 snaps out of him on Sunday's game. So nothing's really going to surprise me at this point. And Dane, I got to tell you, in addition to locking up the number one seed, then on Monday to, see the press conference from Coach LaFleur and talking about all these guys coming back to practice with this week, that couldn't have made me happier. Like you said, you were smiling ear to ear earlier. It was just a week ago. We were reading between the lines and wondering, are any of these guys actually ever going to come back? There's not a lot of time. And it does feel like the coaching staff, not surprisingly, would be very aware that there's some urgency here. We got to get these guys on the field sooner rather than later, if they can. I mean, there's some conservativeness of the Packers medical staff, but then there's also the football reality. So I think they need to balance that, recognize that, what the situation is, and try to make the best decision both for those players and for the team as a whole.
Wags, think about how privileged we are talking about this Packers offensive line, where we're like, oh, that awesome second round center that we drafted this year who was playing lights out before he got injured. Let's not mess with the good thing. Lucas Patrick is playing so well. Oh, Billy Turner, he's pretty banged up. Is he able to come back? Well, Dennis Kelly's been playing fantastic football. Oh, and Josh Nijman on the left side has been playing lights out as well, by the way. So we're okay there. I mean, everywhere you look on this team, we've seen guys just step up at every position group, it seems like. And one of my favorite things that I've been reading this week is, what do you do with Eric Stokes and Rasul Douglas when Jair Alexander comes back? What do you do with the slot? Wags, you coined Packer people problems. This is the epitome of that when we're talking about, oh, we've got too many good cornerbacks going into the playoffs. Whatever shall we do? It's very, very exciting to see, this potentially take shape at the most critical time in the season to get these guys back.
And I just put that in the chat. So if anybody has any Packer people problems that they feel we have, please share with us and we'll get to them throughout the show as we are streaming on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter channels. So, Dane, I think it is fascinating to think about these developments. So, awesome news, not under the radar on Randall Cobb. It seems like we were thinking that would be an 8 plus week
Mhm.
type recovery from surgery. And here we are, 5.5 weeks later, and it looks like he may be able to go on Sunday, get a little bit of work, and then he'll have a bye in 2 weeks to get ready for the playoffs. Um, on that offensive line, just kind of big picture here, interested to hear what you think, pending Billy Turner,
Yeah.
when or if he's able to return. If David Bakhtiari plays Sunday and it looks like he's geared up and ready to go full workload at left tackle for that divisional game, if for some reason we don't think Billy Turner is going to be out that long, but if for some reason he is there any possibility that we have a little bit of competition between Dennis Kelly and Josh Nyman at right tackle? Or would you just roll with Dennis Kelly given the performance that he's given? We know how well Josh has played at left
Right.
tackle. So I don't know if they would tinker with moving someone from the left to right side. I know they want to get their best guys out there. But Dennis Kelly's played pretty darn good football in his own right as well.
Yeah, this might surprise you, Wags, because you know how big of a fan of Yash I am. But I actually stick with Dennis over on the right side. I think he's been playing really, really good football, as you mentioned. There's been no reason to move him, I guess, is the where I'm at. He's got more experience on the right side than Yash does. From my memory books, I mean, Yash has almost always been left tackle for this team. And I think the stakes are that high. If it ain't broke, don't fix it to a certain degree. And you're not sure how well David's going to hold up. I mean, hopefully he holds up that whole game and he's great and everything's fine and dandy. But if not, I don't want to be shuffling Yash back over and all of a sudden you're creating problems all across the board. I would just as soon bring in David. He's your all-pro left tackle. You keep Dennis Kelly on the right side. There's an argument I would make that even when Billy Turner comes back, the way Dennis Kelly's been playing, he's been playing incredible football. That you don't move him off of that right tackle spot. But in this scenario, I'd want to keep Yash in waiting. And we'll see how the game shakes out. But I would go with Dennis Kelly. I really would, and keep him at that right tackle spot because he's just been playing too good a football to warrant him getting pushed off, unless maybe Billy Turner comes back and you go, you know what, we're going to go with our best 5 guys.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love Josh too. Obviously, friend of show.
Right, we love you.
We're his biggest fans. I think you're right, though. I think that's something that you do in the off season. Give him some work at right tackle in the OTAs if you want him to be your primary swing tackle or backup tackle at both sides. But this isn't really the time, I think, to be having someone try to switch from the left to the right side. And for whatever it's worth, sometimes it's not worth upsetting the room because of the performance that Dennis Kelly's given. And as a veteran, it's sort of just kind of keep things status quo there is not the worst idea either. So I couldn't agree with you more. So that's really interesting. I do want to dive into one tidbit of what you just said, though, not to get too hung up on this because I think we'll kind of move forward. But do you think there's a possibility that if Billy Turner comes back, Dennis Kelly could still be at right tackle and perhaps Billy Turner shifts back inside to one of those guard positions?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, what a problem to have, right? I don't know, because if you do that, I mean, I assume you're moving Royce Newman off of guard.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's the way you go because John Running Jr.'s played, I think, probably more steady as the year has improved. And I think Royce Newman long term is projecting to be the starting guard for the Packers, which is so wild to say. But I think that's probably what we do is Billy Turner slots in at one guard spot, John Running at the other, potentially, and you keep Dennis Kelly out there. And that's wild to think about even 6 weeks ago, to think Dennis Kelly would become the starting right tackle, even with Billy Turner back. But maybe that's a possibility here at this point.
Well, I mean, just think about we're without Elton Jenkins, who you could argue is our best run blocking offensive
Definitely.
lineman.
Yeah.
And he's not coming back. But the way that Dennis Kelly has blocked in his pass protection has been much better than I expected. He's always been a strong run blocker.
Mhm.
So you're right. I mean, and Royce Newman's been getting better and better as the
Better and
season's
better.
gone along. He was a little inconsistent for the first half of the season, but he's a rookie and he's been getting better and better. It's an interesting thing to think about if they do decide to put Josh Myers back in as starting center and Billy Turner's at right guard, and then we've got Dennis Kelly at right tackle. And oh, by the way, David Bakhtiari back on the left side.
Right.
That's like a mauling offensive line with, and I don't mean that with any disrespect to what the guys that have been in there have done, but we would just, it's hard not to look at that and be like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like that's an upgrade there. Again, no disrespect to the guys out there.
But I mean, Wags, we're talking 8 or 9 deep right now. The Packers have offensive linemen that could be starting for most of the teams in the league. Like real talk. And that's not hyperbole.
Right. And you can't replace experience. And what Billy Turner and David Bakhtiari and Dennis Kelly bring from an experience standpoint, and Lucas Patrick, we loved Lucas Patrick, but hard-nosed football player, but he doesn't have the size and athletic ability that a Josh Myers has at the center position. So anyway, it's an interesting problem. That's probably my number one Packers people problem that I say we have with the development this week. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how we get a little bit of a read on what the coaches are thinking this weekend, even if we just get a couple of series from some of those guys.
Yeah. I think we'll keep an eye, totally separate from the offensive line, but just going back to the Rodgers thing, Kurt Benkert, I'm wondering if he's up this week. If he's up, that'll be a good tip that Aaron's playing like 2 series. So just keep an eye on that, because once Aaron's out, they're not planning on bringing him back in. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Kurt up just as, as the kind of the de facto number 2 this week to Jordan Love.
Sure. Dane, is it a dangerous or good question to ask? What would you like to see from Jordan Love this week?
I'd like to see him play at a strong pace. I'm not going to throw numbers out there, I don't think. I'd like to see him look like he has a little bit, just a good control of the game, have a good control, a good rhythm. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're scoring touchdowns every time, but going through his progressions, looking comfortable in the pocket, looking like he has good command of the huddle, looking like he's just comfortable on the field with his guys. I think that's mostly what I'm going to be looking for. I'll be curious to see if at the line, if he's able to do any audible or if he's kind of just running straight plays. I think that one of the things coming out of college that some people had questions on with Jordan was his ability to decipher defenses at the line of scrimmage, and thought that was something that he might need to work on. So I'd like to see as the season progresses, if he's got, if that's looking a little bit more comfortable or in his comfort zone. And then I just want to see him go out there and sling the football, Wags. I think he's got a big arm. He's got a strong arm. You can see it comes out of his hand quick. So I'd like to see Jordan back there, not, thinking. But once that ball snapped, I want to see him let it rip. And use his legs, do whatever he needs to do to just keep that ball moving forward and getting first downs. And I think he's capable of doing that. But big picture, broadly, I want to see Jordan just look like he's in command of this offense, the best that a second-year player can have that command, just trusting the guys around him. And then from there, making the throws that are there and just taking what the defense is going to give him. I'm curious, the same question to you, though. What are you hoping to see from Jay Love this week?
Yeah, I really don't have anything to add. Sum it up. I think you kind of hit on really all the key points that I'd be looking for. We what I do want to do is swing a little bit over. We said we weren't going to talk much about this game, and we're not really necessarily talking about this game specifically so far, as much as just what the big picture looks like for this team. But defensively, there's not really a whole lot, I guess, I'd look for in terms of the milestone for your starters out there. But I guess one thing that I would like to see is, for however long our primary defensive guys are out there, your Kenny Clark, your Devondre Campbell, some of our veterans, Adrian Amos, etc. In the secondary, is how well do we play against the run in those first few series for when they're out there? Was last week a mirage, or can we build on that? Is our run defense a sev, or did we get things corrected? Was it just a 1 week thing, or can we go into Detroit, who, for all their flaws, doesn't have the worst running offense in the league? So I think that's a milestone that I'm be looking for from the defense. And then offensively for me, it is, how do we perform in that first series? Do we go out and can we get a touchdown in our first offensive series for once?
That'd be great.
Yeah. Are we, I'm not necessarily looking for us to, the balance, because that's really more of in terms of the run pass. I wouldn't mind if we just slung the ball, 6-7 times and ran the ball once or twice in each series that the starters are out there. Let's just kind of get some passing rhythm. I think that's really more what you're looking for from the offense. Perhaps you get a few run plays, depending on how many of these offensive linemen do end up suiting up and playing, just to see if they can crack some pads a little bit and get a little bit of movement that way as well. But and then as far as Jordan Love, let's just see a good performance for him. I mean, I think it was uneven in his opportunity against the Chiefs, but gosh, this is the last chance we may have to see Jordan Love before the offseason. And what a luxury that is, that we can do it with the stakes so low as they are.
Yeah, it's spot on, Wags. And then special teams, I want to see Mason kick a couple field goals. Not going to lie. He looked good last week, even with the bobbled snap.
52-yarder on second down.
Oh, that. yeah. Well, we're kicking field goals all game. That's all we're doing. No, I'd like to see Mace get out there, and swing the leg a little bit. I'm not going to lie, and just keep getting back on rhythm the way it seems to have been able to do that. But nothing else to add on that front, Wags. I mean, we'll look at individual guys. We're going to see some young guys out there. Amari Rodgers might get some snaps on offense, which I'm actually looking forward to. I like Amari. I want to see him get out there in kind of that slot role a little bit more. And like I mentioned, Patrick Taylor, I'd like to see him get some carries as well, because I just think that we're going to probably limit A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones touches, because it doesn't make sense to give them the ball all that much. You want to see what Patrick can do.
Yeah, for sure. So, Dane, I think we'll kind of continue talking big picture here. Maybe we'll take a look at where we stand against the rest of the most likely NFC playoff field. But before we do that, let's take a quick break, talk about our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NFL. And Dane, it's week 18. You mentioned earlier, it's hard to rely on any of your key guys when you're talking about daily fantasy in terms of fantasy playoff, depending on what your league settings are. So I am curious. You've been keeping your wife Andrea's picks updated with us all season long. What is her strategy coming into this week?
I don't know. I don't know if she knows yet. I think that she's going to be looking at the screen Sunday and making some determinations then. I am lobbying for her to take J-Love and just saying, just have some fun out there, just like Jordan's going to do on Sunday, and let it sling. She actually mentioned Tim Boyle as a possibility, the former Packer who could be starting against the Packers on Sunday. I told her I didn't know if she was trading. I didn't know if she was like the genius for maybe thinking that. So we'll see what she does. But I'll tell you what, Wags, I say it every week, but she loves using DraftKings Sportsbook. It's something that we hear about. People love this offer. You just need to use promo code TPPN. She's been doing it all year long. She's been winning more often than she's been losing. She's up on the year. She's very confident in her abilities at this point. She doesn't take my advice anymore because she's better at fantasy football than me. But it's all because of DraftKings Sportsbook. Use TPPN as the promo code and start winning today.
All right, so download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN. Throw down $1 on any NFL game and win $100 in free bets if either team scores a point. That's promo code TPPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So, Dane, I think I don't know that we're even going to bother doing a X Factor picks or
Yeah,
score
that's hard.
prediction for this game because, frankly, we could really care less about Detroit and what they're doing. So it's just kind of one of those a glorified preseason game as far as the actual outcome is concerned. But what I thought we could talk about for a few minutes here before we sign off this week is just taking a look at where the team stands overall when you look at the rest of the teams that are in this NFC playoff picture. Now, granted, we don't have any idea who we're going to play in the first round, but most of the teams that are going to be in this field have locked up spots for the most part, or we have a pretty good idea of what's likely to happen. So when you look at the landscape, are there any concerns that you have in terms of how this team might match up against certain opponents in this NFC side? Or is there anything that you're really going to be watching as you perhaps watch some of these other teams over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to see that first round of the playoffs. I'll tell you that much. I'll be curious to see it. One thing that I think does play into the Packers' favor is there seems to be a fair number of warm weather teams, and this is a debate you and I have had in the past. But how much does the cold weather impact teams? Remains to be seen, but I'll tell you what, I know the Packers will be able to practice outside in some cold weather leading up to the whoever they end up facing. And I don't care if it ends up being Dallas or Tampa Bay or whoever else. That is a leg up this time. I really think that it is. And I think that this Packer team has a different makeup this year. You and I were talking offline. You made a good point. A lot of the teams that are potential matchups against the Packers going forward get it done through the air. And that is a place where I think the Packers have a lot of strength right now, especially if Jair Alexander comes back. I think I said it last week, but I don't care who you are. Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, Rasul Douglas, Shandon Sullivan. If that's your top four going into playoff games, I like our chances taking on the number one receiver for teams, the number two receiver for teams, and all the way down. Most teams, you start to find mismatches when you get to that three receiver, or, you can find those mismatches. If we've got all four of those guys out there, I really, really, really like our odds. These are all battle-tested guys that have been able to get after it. Eric Stokes has just ascended. Rasul Douglas having a career year. Jair's Jair. Shannon Sullivan. These are our guys. And then not to mention Savage and Amos on the back end that allow for these guys to freelance and do what they do. So without getting into the specifics of teams, I'll just say that any team that's coming into Lambeau in the cold weather better try to get a running game established, and they might not have a good chance if the Packers play like they just played against the Vikings, because if they have to start airmailing it, the way Rashawn's been playing, Preston Smith, if Big Z somehow makes an appearance at the most critical time in our year, we're going to be coming after the quarterback, and they're going to have to get the ball out quick against the best DB group, I think, in the league.
Yeah, and if you look at, not that the seedings are going to be locked in the way they are now, the two best running teams, if the playoffs started today, are the 6 and 7 seed in the San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. So they may have already been knocked out of the playoffs by the time the divisional round rolls around. So you're absolutely right. And Dane, I was telling you before we started that this Packer pass defense, for as much as we concern ourselves with the rush defense, this pass defense without Jair Alexander for most of the season is a top 5 pass defense in the league. And what's crazy thing is that we're tied for second to last in most 40+ yard pass plays in the league, and we're still top 5. So as long as this defense isn't giving up big plays, they're just nasty to try to get the ball, moving in terms of, yards per attempt, in terms of completion percentage, in terms of takeaways. This secondary gets after it. So that is, I think that bodes well for us. And then the other point you make, I couldn't have said any better. We like to tease each other about the cold weather debate, but that's a reality, especially if you've got primarily passing offenses coming to Lambeau. I think Aaron Rodgers has the cold weather throwing thing down to an art form, and I just don't know that some of these other guys really know how to do that. Not saying that they're still not going to be able to be effective at times, but you just don't really know some of the, things that can affect the football that Aaron's experience is going to give him the leg up on. That NFC Championship game against the Buccaneers last year was played with like 10,000 fans in the stands, right, and it was like 38 degrees out. So it was not a normal January playoff atmosphere in Green Bay last year. And I'm not blaming that for the fact that the Bucs won, but it certainly didn't hurt them that it wasn't as cold and we didn't have all of those fans there. So it's having home field, the weather, and kind of just how these teams are built, I think really puts us in a very, very strong position. Dane, I think just one other thing I wanted to ask about is just looking at this playoff picture as a whole. Is there anyone that you'd like to see in terms of an intriguing matchup? Not necessarily, I want to call them out. This is a team that I think yes, it's who you feel good against, but doesn't that potential mashup against the Dallas Cowboys look pretty darn saucy for a divisional round game? I've just got to say, I mean, if they slot in at the 4 seed, win their game in the wild card round, and it holds that the top seeds win in that wild card round, Dallas and Mike McCarthy coming to Green Bay for a divisional round playoff game sounds pretty good to me.
I got to be honest, Wags. As we're talking, my palms are starting to sweat like the game's about to start. I don't feel good about anybody, but I feel great about this team, our team. I get very, very nervous thinking about any team that we've talked about. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's St. Francis Pop Warner football. I'll probably get a little bit nervous just because, we've been through this so many times together over the years. But I will say this. I think that this Packers team, more than any team we've probably ever, that I can say that I've watched, if they stay out of their own way and play the kind of football that we know that they can play, sky's the limit. I really think that. But to completely not answer your question, I don't know. I don't know about who's coming in. I'm nervous about everybody, but I want the Packers to come out hot. I want them to figure out their first quarter issues. I want special teams to get cleaned up, and I want to go play Green Bay Packer football because I think that we have the best roster in the league. I think we have the best coach in the league, and I just want to get it done 2 Sundays, 3 Sundays from now.
So what you're saying is you're cheering for the Rams to beat the Cowboys if they play each other in the wild card game. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
Bring them on, Rex.
Well, what are we doing here if we don't prognosticate? But I know I hear you. All right. Well, I think that kind of exhausts that discussion. Then I just have to pop this up, John. Yeah, thanks so much for following along. This comment is both great because of the score prediction. He says, then I'll make a score prediction, 28-0. A little salty there, John. So I don't know, Dana. Do you think we owe everyone a score prediction for this week? I'm not sure.
Let's do it, Wags. I'll just pop one off right now. I think the Green Bay Packers win, and I think that I think Jordan Love gets in the second half. I think Jordan Love gets in probably partway through the second quarter, in fact. And let's have the Packers at 27, Detroit Lions at 24. It's a close game. It's actually pretty fun to watch. We're going to watch some of the young guys play ball. But Jay Love's going to light it up a little bit. We're going to be talking about how good Jordan Love looks, going forward as well. But he's going to have a good game.
All right, fine. I'm going to go 20-17 Packers. I think they keep everything pretty vanilla. I'm hoping the starting offense goes and throws a couple touchdowns or, a touchdown and field goal up. And, I think Jordan Love can still have a solid game, but I don't think they're going to really show anything. So it's going to be kind of, maybe they're up 20-7 or something, and Detroit scores 10 points in the fourth quarter. All right. So I'm just going to keep that out there. All right. You happy now, John? I hope you're happy. All right. So Dane, anything else that you want to hit on before we close out this episode?
No, not today. I think that looking forward to this one getting wrapped up, and eager for the playoffs. We've been waiting all year for this. It was not a sure thing that this season would unfold the way that it has. Here we are. Let's get through this game healthy on Sunday, and then let's start talking playoff football. Know who we've got. Start breaking it down and doing the stuff that we love to do. Talking about meaningful Packer games in January.
For sure. And judging by your nervousness already, I think that's going to be quite an exciting discussion, but that's what it's all about here, folks. So, all right. Well, we'll try to keep it a little shorter for once, and short for us is 40 minutes. So thanks so much for joining. And as always, be legendary
Pack, go!
and go Pack Go.